Hello! So Hardline was released on March the 17th. That means it's now a month old. And I thought it was probably time to have a look back and see if Hardline has been a success, a failure, or just muddling along. Now I have to say at this point, for me, Hardline is just a game that's out there. I play it maybe once a week. Don't play it for very long. I just want to see what's going on, what the current trends are in the game, what kind of servers are running, all that sort of stuff. In terms of updates, well, there haven't been any for Hardline. The first month of release, no updates, even though a lot of the problems that were identified in the beta are still in this live game. Now I understand that patching a AAA game these days isn't easy. On consoles it has to be certified by Microsoft and Sony, then it can be released, and that process takes a few weeks. However, at this point this isn't waiting for Microsoft or Sony, they're still working on a patch. If you follow Thaddeus, who's the lead multiplayer designer on Twitter, you'll see a lot of posts about things that are going to get fixed, things that they know are wrong. But there's never any date, there's never a clue as to when Hardline is actually going to get fixed. Hardline isn't in as bad a state as Battlefield 4 was when it was launched, but because Battlefield 4 is now so much better, it makes Hardline's faults all the more obvious, especially the netcode. The netcode in Hardline is not great. You're still getting shot round corners, you're still getting delays between shots and damage and kills. The netcode in Hardline is at least one step behind the netcode that's on the live version of Battlefield 4, and it's many steps behind the netcode that's on the CTE version. The winter patch that actually improved the netcode on Battlefield 4 so much actually came out on the 3rd of March, before the launch of Battlefield Hardline. So that has already been tested, developed and worked on, but it's still not appeared for Battlefield Hardline. In fact, none of the changes have appeared. There's no fix for the TDM spawns, there's no fix for the scoring in Hotwire, there's no fix for the RPGs. None of the problems that were identified in the beta at the beginning of February have been fixed, and it's the middle of April. If you bought a copy of Premium, then your situation is even worse, because not only have you not got a patch and any fixes, you've also not got any of the features you were promised in Premium. You will be getting one gold battle pack a month, and when the DLCs come out you'll get those. But what about the 4 fantastic new features we were promised? The masks? No, not seen those. Gun bench? Not seen that. Competitive play? Not seen that either. Legendary status? Not seen that. These features don't show up on Origin anymore when you look at Hardline Premium. So what happened to them? They weren't sold as coming soon, they were sold as in Premium. So when I bought a copy of Premium to see exactly what it was like, well, what I get is a battle pack once a month. That's all I've got from my Premium membership. Doesn't seem very fair. Now you would think it's okay, Origin has a money back guarantee, but Premium isn't a game. It's sold as an add-on, and the Origin money back guarantee doesn't count on add-ons. But what does that mean in terms of Hardline being classed as a success or a failure? Well, for its release, I'd say Hardline was a success. They did some good marketing, the beta went well, but that's where it stops. Its first month has been a failure because there's been no improvement, no fixes, and none of the features that they sold in Premium have actually arrived. You can't call that a success. With Battlefield 4, it took DICE quite a long time to get their act together, to get the communication flowing, to let people know what was going on, and to show us they were actually fixing things, working on the game, and it was a priority. You'd have thought Visceral would have learnt from that and been doing that from the start, but the only way that we really know that anything is going on is because Thaddeus posts on Twitter. that isn't a great way of communicating to your community that you're actually working on the game. So far we've only actually had one official comment from Visceral about the state of the game. That's appeared today on Battlelog, and it lists the top 5 fixes. They're saying their top 5 fixes are Punkbuster fixes, Nvidia DirectX driver fixes, extending the time of conquest rounds, fixing the spawns in Team Deathmatch, and multiple weapon balance tweaks. While it's nice to know that they're working on things, it doesn't say if any of these fixes are completed, if there's an expected date for any of these fixes, or when the first patch is likely to come out. It just says that there's 5 things that they're looking at. It doesn't tell you enough information. Sure, it's nice to know, but it doesn't really help. And I don't think I'm being unreasonable. I think the community would have been happy with a small earlier patch, one that did things like slightly nerfing the K10, only having one RPG in the boot of a car, fixing it so that hotwire scoring wasn't so abusable, and reducing the number of players in some of the maps to 32 from 64. They might have been only temporary fixes, but they would have removed a lot of problems from the game. Hotwire is currently broken, there are too many RPGs and there are too many servers that don't allow kills, because the scoring system is too abusable. The K10 is vastly overpowered. All they had to do was drop its stats down to those of the P90 as a temporary fix. It would have been balanced and it would have worked. But they didn't do anything. Instead, they're waiting to do a big patch. The same thing that DICE used to do. And it didn't work. The only reason that DICE can continue to do the large-scale patches for Battlefield 4 is we know exactly what's going on behind the scenes because we've got CTE. But Hardline doesn't have CTE. It doesn't have open development. So pretty much all we're doing at the moment is staring at a wall and hoping. So if we call Hardline a success in terms of its launch, but a failure in terms of its first month, what was it like in terms of its sales? Well, the only reliable figures I can find are actually for the UK. Hardline has been the #1 seller across all its platforms in the UK since its launch. In fact, it's the most successful game of 2015 so far. And when Bloodborne was released, Hardline still beat it. Bloodborne came in at #2. So Hardline is very popular. But who is it popular with? Hardline is available across 5 platforms. We've got the PC, the PS3, the Xbox 360, the PS4 and the Xbox One. And it has sold pretty well. But as we can't really look at those figures, let's have a look at how many people are playing it. The figures you can see here are the highest player counts that the platforms have achieved over the last 24 hours. So in terms of the PC, 7,020 players, PS3 7,594, Xbox 360 6,179, PS4 40,545 and the Xbox One 30,216. It's quite obvious from these figures that the biggest market for Battlefield Hardline is the next-gen consoles, the PS4 and the Xbox One. And I strongly suspect that the market that is doing well for Hardline is people who walk into brick-and-mortar game shops and buy products off the shelf. Those kinds of purchases are less affected by game reviews, especially online game reviews. If you walk into a shop, see a lot of promotion, see a shiny new game, and your next-gen console doesn't really have that many new shiny games, you're gonna buy it. And Hardline isn't actually a bad game, so once you start playing it, you're going to continue playing it, because it's not like there are a lot of great shooters out there for the PS4 and the Xbox One. Now I could go back and compare those figures to the launch of Battlefield 4, but I'm not going to. I'm going to compare those figures to Battlefield 4 now. So Battlefield 4, being 18 months old, shouldn't be competing with Hardline. But as you can see from these figures, Battlefield 4 is competing with Hardline. In fact, on the PC and the old gen consoles, Battlefield 4 is beating Hardline. An 18-month-old game is beating the brand new Battlefield title. Hardline is beating Battlefield 4 on the next gen consoles, but bizarrely not by as much as I was expecting. I was thinking that if Hardline is doing that well on the next gen consoles, Battlefield 4 must be doing pretty poorly. But the PS4 figures for Battlefield 4 are up there with the PC figures. If we look at the totals, then for Battlefield Hardline, the highest number of players online at any one time is 91,554. Now, to put that figure into context, Counter-Strike gets about 26,000 and Team Fortress 2 gets about 55,000. But those aren't the most interesting figures to compare it against. Those are the Battlefield 4 figures at 97,742. So in the last 24 hours, Battlefield 4 has had a higher number of players than Battlefield Hardline. Now, these figures on their own aren't enough to say if Hardline has been a success or a failure. All they show is that Battlefield Hardline hasn't taken its traditional player base with it. In terms of sales, I've got no doubt that Battlefield Hardline is going to be deemed a success. It's doing well in the charts, it's selling a lot of copies, but how long is it going to last? If it's currently having less concurrent players than Battlefield 4, it's going to be interesting to watch it over the next couple of months. Unfortunately, I think Hardline is going to follow a similar pattern as Titanfall and the latest Call of Duty titles. Yes, it's going to be a big seller, a lot of people are going to play it for a month or two, but it's going to get boring quickly. And when that next shiny new title is launched on the next gen consoles with its marketing campaign and its trailers, Hardline is going to lose a lot of that player base. I think when you have a game that's got smaller maps and a more limited pool of guns, then it just gets very samey very quickly. Everybody uses the K10 because it's the best gun out there. People are still using the 870 because it's better than the other shotguns. M16, M416 are still the best assault rifles. You'd really have a very limited selection of guns in Battlefield Hardline, and because of the bad weapon balance, it's even more limited if you actually want to survive. The maps are smaller, there's less to discover, there's less to actually learn. It also comes down to not as much destruction, so you can't really create new ways to play a map. When you add to that very grindy assignments where you don't really seem to be getting anything done, then individual game sessions aren't as satisfying as they could be. When you compare that to Battlefield 4, which has got the scale and the large selection of guns, and the fact that you unlock guns just by playing the game, and then you've got the assignments, which are actually quite interesting and challenging, you feel like you're getting more done. Every time you play a map, you learn something new. That's the key to Battlefield 4's success. Its scale. Battlefield Hardline doesn't have that scale in terms of maps or weapons, and so it just becomes a bit dull. So when that new shiny game comes along that's got a lot of new features and a lot of advertising and a lot of marketing, it's gonna pull you away from Hardline. And Hardline just doesn't have the attraction to pull you back afterwards. With Battlefield 4, yes, you might get distracted by Hardline, you might go have a look at Call of Duty, you might have a look at other titles. But when it comes to a shooter on that scale, there's nothing else out there. So you progress back when you want that experience again. So when it comes to Battlefield Hardline, I'd say that the launch was a success. The beta was good, the launch was good, but it hasn't lived up to its hype. It hasn't given us the features, it hasn't given us the scale of a Battlefield game, and so it's just kind of forgettable. So launch, a success, the rest of it, not so much. Thanks for watching.